order. This is welcome to the October 8th Board of Directors meeting. And before we get started, I'd like to ask our interpreter to introduce himself and walk us through how to access our translation services. Carlos?
Good morning, Chair. We do have, or we will have, interpretation available, although I still do not see it enabled. So I don't know if we want to pause until everybody can see the icon to proceed with the instructions. Oh, I see them now. You should now all see at the bottom of your Zoom bar where your meeting controls are an icon that looks like a little world. Once you click on it, you can select English as your language in the event that there are any comments in Spanish so that you can get the interpretation into English. However, if you are joining through the Zoom mobile app on a cell phone, tablet, or other mobile device, you would have to press the ellipsis first, the three dots, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish flow in the background. I will now repeat these instructions in Spanish. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, por favor desplácese a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom donde aparecen sus controles, haga clic en el icono de interpretación, aparece un globo terráqueo y seleccione Spanish o español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom en celular, tableta, etc., presione primero los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Por último, si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio o silenciar audio original. Gracias and thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. So now I would like to invite you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we have non-agenda public comments. And I would like to start by thanking everyone who joined us last week for a community bike ride on the Inland Rail Trail in San Marcos. I did go out and participate in that, and it's really great to see these projects that are being built to protect cyclists all throughout our county. There were a number of people who came out to check out that project and enjoy our beautiful region on their bicycles. It was also a great opportunity to learn more about the 2021 regional plan, which helps us to advance bike projects across the county. I know that staff is planning more family-friendly activities like this later in the month, and I hope that you can consider joining. I'd also like to recognize two SANDAG projects that were named Project of the Year, and these were Projects of the Year by the American Public Works Association. So they'll be honored on September 24th at the annual gala. So the first one was in North County and the second one was in South County. So the first project was the Build NCC San Elijo Lagoon Restoration Project. So this was a cooperative effort that enhanced wetland areas, improved tidal flushing, and replenished beach sand. And I know the contractor Marathon did a great job and was very responsive to the local community, which includes my city of Encinitas. And I was always happy with the responsiveness there. The second project awarded was the South Bay Bus Rapid Transit Project. And this was a $139 million project that began full service and provides travelers with a frequent and reliable transit choice. And I'd like to congratulate all of our SANDAG and Caltrans staff that helped make these projects a reality. And then lastly, before I open it up to board members, I want to welcome some of our alternates who are here with us today. So first I'd like to welcome Councilmember Goebel from El Cajon and Councilmember Mullen from Poway. If there's anybody else I missed from those two, please pop on and say hello.
Good job.
That's right.
You did good. Anna did good for the first one.
And with that, I've now finished the announcements. So we'll go to public comment. And also, I'd just like to ask SANDAG production staff, if you could make me a co-host, it would allow me to mute when we're having background feedback. So thank you for that.
Chair Blakespeare, I think we may be having some technical difficulties with the Zoom platform. I know there are a lot of members who are not able to be promoted at the moment, and so we can't let them speak. So if you wouldn't mind just pausing for a moment for me to confirm with the production team what's going on and see if we can get going again in just a moment.
Okay, thanks. And I think Serge Dedina is in the waiting room, the Imperial Beach mayor. I think we should proceed and allow some of these comments, and then people can still hear. So why don't I call on Gustavo to give his report, and then, or his announcement, and then I'll call on Marisol Solis, and we can then go to the public comments.
Thank you, Chair Blakespear, members of the board. First, I wanted to congratulate all the Caltrans staff that worked on both projects, actually, the San Elijo Lagoon as well as the South Bay BRT. But it was a great partnership, as you mentioned, between many agencies, contractors and consultants, and it's a great achievement to get the Project of the Year award for both of those projects. I did want to put a few events on the board's radar, starting with a workshop that actually happened yesterday that is the second workshop related to Clean California, the local grant program. So hopefully all of your jurisdictions participated either in the September workshop or yesterday's workshop. And if you didn't, they're recorded, so they're available for viewing. But these workshops basically let your jurisdictions know how to apply for beautification grants up to $5 million each. There is $296 million for grabs statewide. So let's try to compete for those from our local jurisdictions here and try to bring some of that money home to make our communities better. Also this week on the Clean California front, the state launched a water quality campaign called Let's Change This to That, with a couple of pictures. One of them is a water body that is impaired by litter, and the other one, the same water body after it's cleaned. So you're gonna start seeing some billboards, some ads, and some social media related to this campaign. It is part of Clean California. It is not the main education campaign under Clean California. That one will roll out later this year, but it is a step in a good step in the right direction to keep our water bodies free of litter and all the harms that they cause. Also, another event coming up is on October 19th, 20th, and 21st is the 17th Annual Procurement Fair. This is a very important event put together by the Public Agency Consortium, of which SANDAG and Caltrans are a part, related to small business. And during this 3-day event, small businesses are gonna be able to learn how to do business with our agencies, also how to connect with prime contractors as well as consultants. And also they will be able to meet with purchasers, and hopefully at the end of the event, some good purchases are gonna be done. This is very important for us at Caltrans, particularly now that our disparity study has been approved by Federal Highways, and our new DBE goals have increased to 22.2% effective October 1st. And these new goals are gonna be in place for 3 years here at Caltrans. So we need to do everything we can to continue engaging and doing business with small businesses. Also on October 27th to 29th, AASHTO is coming to San Diego. San Diego will be hosting the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials at the Hilton Bayfront. So it's an event that is going to bring many leaders related to transportation to San Diego. So we're very happy to be hosting that event. And then the last 2 things I will mention, one is that the state also has $35 million of sustainable community grants and strategic partnership grants also available. Each grant is up to $500,000. So hopefully you're all looking at possibilities to applying for these grants. There is a match of, depending on which grant you apply for, can vary between 11 to 20%. But like I mentioned, there's $34 million available statewide. So hopefully all of your jurisdictions are considering applying for these grants. October 12th, next week, we will be doing the groundbreaking for the last project that will extend the HOV lanes on the I-5 North Coast Corridor from Palomar Airport Road to 78. So we're very excited about that project. That project will bring an innovation to improve safety in construction zones, which will be orange striping. So as we put the striping for the construction staging of that project, you will see this orange paint on the ground, and that will reinforce that you're in a construction area to keep all of our workers and our contractors safe. So the last thing I will mention is there was some changes at 905 and the last US exit before you reach the Otay Mesa port of entry. What that means is that the exit is now about half a mile earlier than it used to be. So there's a lot of signing out there letting people know that Siempre Viva, where the Siempre Viva exit is now. Hopefully people are following those signs, because if you don't, you're gonna head straight into Mexico. So if there are any questions, I'm available to answer them. Thank you so much for your patience.
Okay, thank you very much, Gustavo. And before I call on Mayor Sotelo Solis, I just wanted to recognize, I had overlooked recognizing MTS. So they are the operator of the bus system in the South Bay Rapid BRT, which won the award. So they should be acknowledged along with Sandag and Caltrans. I just wanted to make sure we recognize their good work. So thank you, MTS. So let's go ahead and I'll call on you, Mayor Sotelo Solis, and then I'll go to you, Mayor Hall.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman. And I too appreciate the shout out to MTS and North County Transit for all of their work to helping make these transportation lines all connect. All right, so last week I was in DC with Mayor Todd Gloria, Vice Chair 1. We attended several meetings, including discussions with Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Mr. James Balaki, Congressman Levin and Vargas, and had a chance to go to the White House, the West Wing, and say hello to some of the leaders there. This provided me the opportunity to advance, and I would say for both of us, to really talk about regional projects such as the transit connection to Navor, Losan, and the construction at Otay Mesa East. Additionally, I was able to convey the importance of working with local jurisdictions to leverage our investments to address those national issues that are still being worked on as we speak right now. Working with the federal government, again, provides us the tremendous opportunity for us and our projects, such as the Mid-Coast Trolley, to show that that is collaboration. That is how we leverage efforts and resources. And so it was also a great opportunity to thank them, to thank our delegation for that leadership. Again, the SANDAG programs and policies are notable. And we know that as we plan for our binational Big Five moves, we're all bringing to the table infrastructure solutions, and it's trips such as this one that highlight our region's ability to work together to advance those projects, to create jobs and improve quality of life. And I definitely look forward to working with my colleagues here at the SANDAG table and our colleagues through our delegation to advocate for those critical funds, both in DC and Sacramento and locally at the county. So thank you again, Chair, for the opportunity to give that quick update of DC. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate hearing about it. Mayor Hall.
Yes, I just wanted, Mr. Gustavo wanted to mention that Caltrans and I believe SANDAG on October 12th at 1 p.m. is having a gathering in Holiday Park for the ribbon cutting on NCC, Build NCC. Is he still with us?
I'm not sure. I see that he's still on screen. There he is.
Yes, I am, Mayor Hall. Yes, as I mentioned on October 12th, and as you shared the time as well, from 1 to 2 at the Holiday Park, we will be doing the groundbreaking for segment 4, which is the project that will extend the HOV lanes on I-5 from Palomar Airport Road to State Route 78. So thank you for participating as part of that event, Mayor. We will also have our new Commissioner Falcon, and we are hoping to have our Caltrans Director there as well.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, perfect. I thank everybody for those updates. I just wanted to point out that this is an exciting time for our region. The decisions this body is going to make is going to impact and benefit thousands of families into the future. My kids, their kids, and that's a big responsibility on all of our shoulders. And I've been reading through some of the comments from the public, and I've been privy to one particular commentator with respect to materials for future projects in construction with respect to cement, which is a major cost for future projects. And it's also greatly impacts our environment. And they make mention of new technologies and patents that allow less cement to be used, which will save, roughly 15% on the cost of the concrete. And it's also showing, because the less cement you use, the less GHGs are released. So it's also showing a 30 to 40% reduction in GHGs. And I'm really interested in looking at policies like this that could potentially lower costs and lower the impacts to our environment instead of a kind of same old. And so I'd love to sit down with passionately environmentalists like Councilmember Shu to discuss, some of this new technology that we could, possibly implement in the regional plan to save cost and create less impacts to our environment. So I just want to put that out there.
Okay, thank you, Council Member. We appreciate that. Mayor Gasterland.
Yeah, just a quick heads up, I guess. We are aware in Del Mar that Oceanside is moving forward with groins, and we'd like to know if there's a regional plan, if Sandag is going to be involved, and if the beaches are going to be studied, because groins and Oceanside will catch sand and starve the beaches downstream in Carlsbad, Encinitas, Solana Beach, and Del Mar onto Torrey Pines State Park in La Jolla. So we're very concerned about groins.
Okay, thank you. Joanna from the Airport Authority.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I hope you saw the really wonderful news, but in case you didn't, I wanted to report that we unanimously voted on the final approvals yesterday for the new T1 project at the airport. And so several of my airport board colleagues are here, like Mayor Blakespear, Mayor Salas, Mayor McNamara. And we're really thrilled to have crossed this final threshold. We hope to be having a groundbreaking in early November about that project. And so it's really going to transform the customer experience coming into SAN. I also wanted to pass on thanks from our team who has worked with the Sandag team so closely on all of the planning around a new transit connection to the airport, which again, I think will transform our region's ability for transit access. And then we also wanted to let you know, we do now have, in late November, we have plans to launch an all-electric fleet that will carry transit riders from the Old Town Transit Center to the airport and back. So we're working on that as a meantime solution on the transit connection with that all-electric fleet that we're really proud of. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that, but Chair, I did want to recognize that here. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. It's a really big deal, and Mayor Salas just showed us the front page of the newspaper, top of the fold. That's the story. And so, yeah, it's a huge deal in this county, and I really appreciate you highlighting those things, and particularly the connection of transit. So thank you. Mayor Dedina.
Yeah, I think the coastline's on everyone's mind today is, unfortunately, tar balls apparently are washing up in North County. And thanks, Mayor Blakesfield, for all your leadership in addressing the impacts of the oil spill. But just to get back to Mayor Gastelum, your own council member, Dwight Worden, and I are both members of the Shoreline Preservation Committee working group that I chair at Sandag. And we've asked that this issue of groins be placed on the agenda. But just in defense of Oceanside, because I attended the meeting that we held at the Shoreline Working Group on this issue, is I don't think anyone's dumping rocks anytime soon. I think they're doing an analysis of lots of different options as I understood the project. So I don't see rocks going anytime soon, but obviously discussing groins in a regional context and shoreline preservation and coastal management is absolutely the right thing to do. And I think Sandag's done a great job in leading that discussion. Second, there's a reason why all of us are talking about eliminating oil drilling from the coast of California and decommissioning oil rigs, because and really phasing out of fossil fuels, and why Imperial Beach was the first city in the world to sue the fossil fuel industry, basically all the major oil companies, for causing climate change. And that's because the damage done by carbon, whether it's in the ocean or in the air, is killing our planet, and there's no going back from it. Tar balls washing up in Del Mar, Oceanside, and Solana Beach, and closing beaches in Orange County. There's nothing good about fossil fuels. So the best thing that we can do to reduce GHGs is continue on the path that we're going, look at all the alternative technologies, but can we please get rid of oil drilling and all these oil facilities off our coast that only cause to destroy our coast, and make sure that the Coast Commission doesn't approve renewing rigs off of Santa Barbara. We had a horrible spill in Goleta not too long ago. That's it. And I feel really bad for everybody about closed beaches, and it's really a shame that we're having an oil spill, but now you know how we feel in Imperial Beach. Our beach is closed right now, 300 days last year of closed beaches. So we've got to do everything we can to keep every beach in California open, including ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Dedina. We appreciate all that you're doing, chairing that coastal shoreline preservation working group, and how you're tying together the issues. So thank you very much for that. Okay, Councilmember Rodriguez, and then let's go to the public comments and move on with the agenda for today.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make comment to our neighboring cities. Number one, we agree on keeping our beaches open, and you know, the elimination of offshore drilling. We're in full support of that in Oceanside. Two, we have no intention of causing any impacts or issues to our neighboring cities. We're all in this together. We are just moving on with studies, as Mayor Dedina pointed out. We're just studying, looking at the data so that we could prepare for our future, and that future involving our neighbors. So I just want to point that out and make sure that everyone is aware.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go to public comments, and then we'll go to Hassan's chair's report. Francesca, do we have public comments?
Thank you, Chair. We do have two hands up, continuing to go up. Casey Bennett will be first, followed by Abdur Rahim Hamed. Casey Bennett, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning. Hello, my name is Casey Bennett, and I am a heavy equipment operator / general foreman who works for Berg Electric. I've worked for Berg Electric for 16 years. For my time here, I've been able to create a career that not am I only passionate about, but also financially supports me and my family and promotes my personal growth and development. As stability is crucial in any line of work, being able to have work daily at a competitive wage is incredibly important to my livelihood. After 16 years with Berg Electric, the workflow has been reliable and consistent, and my growth and development has been supported and encouraged. Years of industry experience is highly sought after. If I were to walk into any local union, I would be a highly desirable candidate. However, I haven't done that. I've done that because PLAs are a one-size-fits-all monopoly agreement meant to protect the 10% of the San Diego County construction workforce that is union. It discriminates against the 90% that are non-union. Why would you vote to support something that excludes people? Why would I support a faction that excludes well-trained industry professionals and denies growth opportunities due to merit, hard work, and desire to be better? I choose to work here at Berg Electric and will continue to do so. If I thought unions provided a better deal to me, I'd be union. But I'm not. I'm proud of the career I've grown and the life I have, and this wasn't done with a PLA. This was done with an inclusive, merit-based company who saw my success as their own success. And for that, I've been rewarded greatly. I request the reconsideration of this PLA as it excludes me and other hardworking professionals from opportunity. This work is our livelihood. Do not exclude workers who have created careers. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Casey. It looks like we lost the next person. So I'll move on to Nicole Burgess, who will be followed by Shane Harris. Nicole, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, board. Sandag, I hope you can hear me fine. And I want to wish you a happy Friday. And I really just want to call out to all those wonderful leaders that you are on the board. I could say them all, Mayor Blakespear, Chair Solette Solis, and Mayor Gloria. Wonderful leadership out there. And I thank you for the collaboration and the effort, including Caltrans. Jack Shu, Gassaran, Serge Dedina, all of you are so wonderful to have on this board compared to the past. So thank you for all your leadership and all your advocacy on all the issues here. I just want to comment on Councilmember Rodriguez. I love your idea of innovative technology, talking about concrete. There's actually even more breathable concrete that I'm trying to research. So this is a conversation. However, the number one thing is to use less. So less is more, less is better. And going back to Mayor Serge Dedina, we've got to get rid of the fossil fuel industry and adding capacity onto our highways. So I'm really just encouraging more people-centric mobility. You know, I don't mind DG gravel paths for bikeways. In fact, colored asphalt is what I recommend for bikeways. Kudos to Caltrans. Another great innovative one, Mr. Rodriguez, is gabions. So Caltrans has actually used gabions or rock cages. They're great for homes. They're great for infrastructure. They're great for amazing places like the Marina Boulevard off-ramp at Caltrans. And you can see this from the bike path. They are amazing. They are so much more user-friendly. I actually can build them myself rather than a concrete wall. And they're so much better for my health. And they let the water go through. And water is so valuable. So thank you again to our coastal leaders. I want to take the last 30 seconds and just take time for those who we've lost on our streets and take a moment here of silence as we heard 2 weeks ago. It's dangerous out there, and Sandag really has an opportunity with the Vision Zero throughout our cities to really advocate for taking care of our residents on the streets. We must all do better. And we must all enjoy this wonderful city we have before it is gone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nicole. Next, we'll go to Abdur Rahim Hamed, followed by, I'm sorry, I'm gonna butcher this name, but I think it's Gvenable. Abdur, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Mayor Todd Gloria, and honorable mayors of the city of San Diego. My name is Abdur Rahim Hamid, and I'm basically bringing some information to you about National Apprenticeship Week, which is going to be the 15th through the 21st. National Black Contractors will be celebrating our graduation on the 19th, which we extend an invitation to you. Apprenticeships are a part of the college system. I'm an adjunct professor at San Diego City College. I teach Black contractor studies and apprenticeship. And we're excited about the fact that we're creating opportunities for people to be skilled and trained and join trade unions, open shop opportunities, and take participation in construction. These are free agents. We don't own them once they graduate. They are free to go and be successful. So I'm extending an invitation to you, and also I'll be sending some formal invitations to you about the graduation. VCA is a historic program, and we're excited about it, and we'll have a celebration on the 19th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we will go to Venable, followed by Shane Harris.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gary Venable. I am a certified electrician who works for Berg Electric. For those of you who are not familiar with Berg, our impact has not only reached the greater San Diego area, but has continued to scale, resulting in a national presence as one of the largest electrical contractors in the nation. With a national presence comes a national team of industrial professionals. I had the opportunity to work with some of the most well-versed and respected electricians in the industry. These professionals, like me, are the best in their field and have devoted their life to their craft. Berg Electric has supported this growth and my development through a merit-based shop, and has led me to stand right here today as a general foreman for 11 years with Berg Electric, 16 years in the industry. leading job sites successfully, continue to better my craft. So why, after a great career, would I want to leave Berg to work for a union? I work alongside the best industry professionals at a competitive wage, health benefits for me and my family, a stable workflow, and I have bettered myself, my career, and my family's life. And furthermore, I have become a skilled electrician with industry exposure beyond a general scope of work. I am supported financially, educationally, and challenged to turn my craft and passion into a career. However, the PLA could change that. I am calling upon you today to reconsider the negotiation of the PLA. These provisions are meant to keep me and other highly qualified union-free construction workers working under one. These provisions force a hand in supporting union dues, union pension, and benefit of a small population of union workers. I have the benefits, skill, and support right here where I am at. This PLA will strip us the right of working on a prospective opportunities and restrict you from capable and seasoned industry professionals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to Shane Harris, who will be our last commenter.
Yes, good morning. Oh, was I unmuted already, or?
Sorry about that, Shane. Yeah, you can go ahead now. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, good morning. This is Shane Harris, the jack of all trades, but the Government Affairs Director of the National Black Contractors Association. I want to cordially support Abdul Rahim Hamid's request to the mayors across our county who sit on this board. One of the responsibilities as leaders, especially in elected office, is that you learn, you go, you travel, you see, you talk to people that you may not usually talk to, and you engage with people and you learn from people. And I think that is the evolution of a good leader. I would encourage you all to look into your schedules on the 19th regarding the National Black Contractors Association's graduation. To see these apprentices graduate, it is another level of understanding pertaining to what the Black Contractors Association is doing. And I think so often, there is often, bitter battles on, PLAs or on this or on that. But at the end of the day, if you don't see these apprentices and you don't see this kind of graduation, you really can't speak to the issue. And so visit the National Black Contractors Association on the 19th, hear from these apprentices on their experiences, and be able to understand and reflect upon how to make jobs and money on our regional level more accessible to these apprentices, and ensuring that there's an equitable entry into the construction industry for these young men and women who are graduating from the BCA. So I've had the chance to see the benefit of this program. The free opportunity, no dues, and on and on and on, no fees, just being able to get into the program and being able to learn. And I've seen the opportunity that these young people have had and how it has transformed their lives. Everyone from foster youth to folks coming out of prison and enrolled at City College. I mean, I've seen it on and on and on. The stories are phenomenal. So I would just encourage you to come to the National Black Contractors Association on the 19th and be able to hear from, these different apprentices who are graduating and what they're looking to do in the industry. You all have a good meeting. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, and Chair, that does conclude the public comments.
Okay, thank you very much to the public today. So let's go ahead with the chair's report. or with the executive director report. Hassan?
Sorry, Chair Blakespear, we had some technical difficulty. Sorry, good morning to all of you, Chair Blakespear, Vice Chair Gloria, Vice Chair Sotala Sadias. Good morning to all of you board members. And thank you for allowing me to speak for a few minutes. Couple of announcements first. One is after discussing with the leadership, just want to inform you that we will continue doing our meeting remotely until at least the end of the year. I think the state is extending the time when we can do that. We'll reevaluate as we get to the end of the year, end of December. Hope by then all of you will be vaccinated and ready to come back next year. The November 5th, though, your retreat, that's, I think, been held in person, I believe, and maybe Chair Blakespear will speak to that later. Today, I'm going to spend the bulk of my my Chief Executive report just reminding you where we were on the Regional Transportation Plan, where we are today. It is very important, and you could go back to my statements when I started 2.5 years ago, a little bit over, that I said many times that innovation, climate change will drive our transportation decision. My team and I, for the last 2.5 years, have been working with stakeholders, with everyone, to make sure that vision is put in front of you in a couple of months. We are serious about Vision Zero. As Mayor Gloria was telling the National Deputy for Transportation last week, Vision Zero is not just a slogan. It has to be the way we behave. Many of you heard from the sister of the man killed in Balboa Park. That was, I mean, if that couldn't move you, I don't know what would. Therefore, from the get-go, we said innovation, climate change, safety is going to drive our development of the transportation vision. Vision Zero is serious. Innovation is serious. That's why in the next couple of weeks, you're going to see SANDAG released requests for information concepts to connect to the airport, to connect the landmarks in San Diego, to give San Diegans choices. And that's not only for downtown, but every part of the region. We also said many times that future technologies is going to be here. It's going to be tried in San Diego. That's why we're releasing this concept. We also said many times that transit station as parking lots should be part of the past. We should look at truly make transit work, coordinate with housing and housing programs. And in the next few months, we will be bringing you a lot of things. Actually, in the next couple of months. The first thing we're going to be bringing you is a major regional transportation improvement program amendment, about $150 million that we're going to be asking you to reprogram to different priorities in the region. We're also going to be bringing you to changing the bike program to be true to Vision Zero. And like Chair Blakespear said, we're going to work with the willing cities as your action last time on the bike program. Staff will come back with suggestion of how we move this and stop the delays. We will be not only making TIP amendments, and we are going to do that just simply to give San Diegans a little taste of what would look like the future system, the innovation, the technology, climate change. I would ask that you, of course, as always, ask the tough question, demand that your staff have answers to them. But I also want to let you know that we're talking about the future. And providing choices for San Diego is a must. With that, I'm going to ask Colleen Clemenson to come in and give you a brief overview, and then we'll be happy to answer a question after that. So Colleen, take it away.
Thank you, Hassan. And I think you all know that we are in the home stretch to December 10th, and that is the day that you all will be asked to consider the 2021 regional plan and the environmental impact report. There are several things that we're going to bring forward to you. As Hassan mentioned today, you're going to hear about the environmental impact report. Keith Greer will present that to you. October 20th, we will actually be posting the comments and responses to comments that we received on the draft regional plan. So those will post on October 20th, and then we will discuss those with you on October 29th. And more specifically, we will talk about changes from the draft plan to what you can expect to see in the final plan. On October 22nd, we'll be bringing two very important items to you, one on the digital divide strategy and another on our equity pilot projects. And so these are two really important aspects that feed into the regional plan. One is making that strong commitment to social equity through some pilot projects. And the second is really addressing the digital divide and the importance of broadband internet service throughout the region, because that's so important in how our whole transportation system works. I wanted to give you a sense of some of the things that you can expect to see in terms of changes that we'll be recommending in the final plan to you. We really sharpened our pencils on costs, sharpened our pencils on the revenues. And in fact, we were able to identify a broader pool of potential revenues. I think we heard from a lot of you and others through the public comment period. What happens if all the revenue sources don't come through? So for this reason, we have a little bit broader pool to draw from. There were a lot of comments around value pricing. And so a couple of changes that you'll see there. We had assumed a road user charge in the draft plan that would start around 2026. We're actually pushing that out to start in 2030. And that helps to align with what the state is thinking in terms of a road user charge. And also that would be the point in time where we would have compelling transit options in place. I think one of the things that we've really been working on is we can't really be charging people to use roadways until we have a compelling transit, convenient, safe option available. Also, when it comes to transit, the draft plan included free transit for low-income youth and seniors starting in 2030. We're proposing to make a commitment to study how we could get to free transit for everyone by 2030. In sharpening our pencils on costs, we've now been able to include the cost for bathrooms at all new major transit stations. And we'll be proposing to study how we can retrofit some existing stations for bathrooms as well. When it comes to technology, there were a lot of questions about how do we know this technology will work or that technology will work. We are proposing a number of pilot programs to test new technologies, to test flexible fleets. And this gets to the point that Hassan raised earlier about the request for innovative concepts that we will be releasing. So really trying to test out some ideas in smaller geographies so that we can look at how that could be applied longer term. Also making a commitment to Vision Zero. Hassan mentioned that, but that's going to come across much stronger in the plan that we plan to bring forward to you, and truly committing to safety for bicyclists and pedestrians on local streets and roads. Another area is in terms of habitat. The draft plan proposed to fund about half of our habitat plans. As we bring this forward, we're going to talk about a regional commitment to fully fund the habitat planning areas. So both the MSCP and the MHCP. And then another area, and this has come up too in your discussions, has to do with land use and the land use assumptions that have been made in the plan, and really clarifying, and this is something that Mayor Huebner had suggested, and we'll be incorporating this into the plan, about local land use authority. While our plan may be suggesting that we really focus growth and development in our mobility hubs in our urbanized areas of the region, exactly where that gets placed in those mobility hubs will be up to the local jurisdictions. Clearly, that's where the land use authority lies, and how you implement your RHNA, your regional housing needs assessment, will be up to the local land use authorities. So those are a few of the things that I wanted to kind of give you a heads up about to expect to see, and what we'll be presenting to you on the 29th. We've really appreciated the vast amount of public comments. I think we received more than 1,000 comments. So we'll have pages and pages of responses to all of those comments to share with you on October 29th. So that concludes our report today.
Okay, thank you. Before I call on the board members, I just wanted to ask if there are public comments on the Executive Director report, to go ahead and put your hand up. So Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you. I'll be brief. It's with respect to Hassan's comments. Thank you for your comments and your commitment to our region and this regional plan, and your drive to fully push it through. I just want to reiterate some past projects from the past regional planning that we desperately need in North County that I don't think funding has been identified for. And I would just like comments from yourself or staff with respect to finishing the HOV lanes from the 78 to Vandergrift, which is right there by Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton, and the 78 I-5 interchange. Those are just, they've been on the plan. I don't see identified funding, but we desperately need those in North County. And I just would like some comments back on that, if you could, Hassan.
Sure, I'll be happy to, Councilmember Rodriguez. As you're gonna see, and you already saw in the draft plan, all of the projects that you're talking about, they were part of the previous plan and transit amendment has been replaced with the new plan and amendment. So regarding the 78, there is a new proposal, not an HOV direction like the old plan called for, but combining shoulder with existing lane with high occupancy toll lanes, which with the connector, the I-5 and 78. I advise you to look closely at the new list, and we believe very strongly that we're presenting a better option when it comes to that. As to the HOV on the 5, part of the TIP amendment, that budget amendment we're going to take to you next month, I'm going to would like to restore some money to convert the HOV to hot lane, which was originally thought of, but we didn't have the money then. So Councilmember Rodriguez, if you look at the new list, there's a new list of projects that we believe is going to perform better than the old list.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Huebner.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Hassan and Colleen for the responses to the overview of the responses. And they're great. They're really responsive, you know, I mean, they really listen to people. They're visionary, especially the idea of studying free transit for all. That's excellent, and practical. Things like bathrooms are kind of practical. My question is the mobility hubs, again, thank you for that clarification, but when is it that we're going to decide those boundaries, each of our cities? They're undefined now. They've been referred to as blurbs. And if we are going to be using those as the location for most of our arena numbers. Of course, between now and 2030, some of our smaller cities will be running out of room in our mobility hubs, which is why I'm glad that urbanized area phrase is in there as well. But we'd like to, I'd like to know, I'm sure others would, when do we get to define those boundaries of our mobility hubs?
Let me start and maybe Colleen can continue. Mayor Huebner, thank you for the question. You know, obviously, we want to start with the winning. The city of San Diego would like to have a central mobility hub. We're going to start there. City of Escondido, when we talk to Mayor McNamara, he has a desire to look at the NCTD transit, and we're working with NCTD toward that. We're going to start with the willing. Now, as you know, the adopted regional housing need assessment put over 70% of housing in transit quality areas. And we're going to work with you to define that. I believe as we move and implement and start with the willing, it's like the bike program. If we go work with the willing cities, we're going to do much more than forcing ourselves on. The bottom line is this: I don't think we should invest billions of dollars, billions, on transit and have a ghost parking lots. I mean, if a city comes and says, I want a transit station, but I want you out of my face when it comes to mobility hub, that doesn't work because you're investing a lot of money. Now, as I said to you, Mayor Huebner, and Colleen repeated it, and our comments reflected, we don't have land use authority. We have a desire to work with you to incentivize you to I think, link transportation and housing. So, Colleen, you want to add to that?
Well, my question was, when do we define the boundaries? Because we now don't have defined boundaries. And I mean, I'm perfectly willing I'm a willing city too. I just want to know when we're going to know exactly where this is in our city.
Yeah, okay. And that's a fair question. Once we adopt the plan and we're going to move into the tip and the implementation, that's when we start defining boundaries for the willing cities. So it's immediately after the adoption of the plan, actually, giving the funding availability, we'll start, right, Colleen?
Yeah, and I guess what I would say is we have rough boundaries identified right now in the plan. I mean, it is a GIS layer, so that's kind of the starting point. And then as each of you update your plans, we are happy to work with you on how those get defined. We'll be coming to you later about the Smart Growth Incentive Program grant funds. That will be an opportunity for us to help fund these planning efforts to help refine those boundary areas as well. So it'll be an iterative back and forth process, and we definitely look forward to working with all of you on that. And like Hassan said, we're going to start with the jurisdictions that want to do that planning right away. So you'll be hearing more about that in November, about the funding that we're going to make available to do that planning work.
So if I'm hearing correctly, it's our tip by our tip. Is that kind of how we're doing it? Okay. All right. Thank you. A little more clear.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Hall?
Yes, and I'm not sure, some of these comments are maybe more towards item 6 on the agenda today than it is under the executive director's report. So I just want to ask the chair, should we keep asking questions around his report, or shall we keep them till item 6 on the agenda?
I think we should keep them to item 6, and I also think we need to get onto the agenda because it's now been an hour.
I yield to you.
Okay, so yeah, and I'm thinking about, in terms of meeting management, I might move all of these board reports and comments and everything to the end of meetings to make sure we can accomplish the goals that Sandex needs to get through in every meeting. So, you know, I'll be working on that, but I do think we need to move forward here. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, Mayor Hall. So do we have any, I need to ask, do we have any public comments on this, the executive's report?
No, Chair, there are no hands from the public.
Okay, great. So let's move on to our consent. So we have consent items 3 and 4. Do we have any public comments on consent?
No, Chair, no hands from the public.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion.
Move approval, Huebner.
So moved, Raquel Vasquez.
Thank you very much. For the City of Carlsbad, Mayor Hall.
Carlsbad, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Chula Vista, Mayor Salas.
Salas, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Coronado, Mayor Bailey.
Bailey, yes.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson Reamer.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of El Cajon, Councilmember Goebel.
El Cajon, yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
You skipped Del Mar.
Thank you. I just realized that. For the City of Del Mar, Mayor Gasterland.
Del Mar, yes.
Thank you. Sorry about that. For the City of Encinitas, Chair Blakespear.
Chair, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Escondido, Mayor McNamara.
McNamara, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Imperial Beach, Mayor Dedina. lose Mayor Dedina? I'll come back to the City of Imperial Beach. For the City of La Mesa, Councilmember Shu.
Mesa, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Lemon Grove, Mayor Vasquez.
Mayor Vasquez, yes.
Thank you. For the City of National City, Second Vice Chair Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis, aye.
Thank you. For the City of Oceanside, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Rodriguez, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Poway, Councilmember Mullen.
Poway, yes.
Thank you. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Gloria.
San Diego, aye.
Thank you. For the City of San Marcos, Mayor Jones.
San Marcos, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Santee, Mayor Minto.
Minto, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Solana Beach, Mayor Huebner.
Huebner, yes.
Thank you. And for the City of Vista, Mayor Ritter.
Ritter, yes.
Thank you very much. And for the City of Imperial Beach, Mayor Dedina, are you still with us?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to give the production team a moment here. That motion did pass unanimously.
Okay, been a little bit of trouble there seeing it, but we did hear it. So that's great. Okay, thank you. So let's move on to items. There are now 3 items, 5, 5A, and 5B. So the first report is an update on the salaries and compensation audit, and this has 2 components. We'll hear both presentations and then open it for discussion. So first we have Melissa and John, who will share progress on the compensation audit action plan.
Great. Thank you, Chair Blakespear, for the introduction, and good morning, board members. It's good to see you all again. On behalf of the Sandag management team, we appreciate the opportunity to provide this report this morning. As the chair mentioned, John Kirk and I will be presenting the staff report here. Our intention is to highlight some of the work that's been accomplished in recent months as we continue to implement changes and improvements that are part of the compensation audit action plan. And just to reference that there is a staff report for this item starting on page 11 of your online agenda package. And we'll be referring to several of the attachments that were included. Before we dive into the updates, I thought perhaps just a minute to quickly recap where we're at. The action plan that I'm referring to was developed by management and approved by this board last November. The plan addresses recommendations from the salaries and compensation compliance audit that was conducted by Sandag's independent performance auditor, Mary Koshmashrab, and her team last year. And the plan incorporates input that was provided by the audit committee as well as the board during their review of the audit. We often talk about the plan being comprehensive in nature. It includes 27 different actions that touch on several agency business processes and practices when it comes to our compensation program. The timeline for implementing the plan is about 18 months, with all actions due to be fulfilled by June of next year. And to date, all of the deadlines have been met and staff are on track to deliver the remaining items per the approved plan. I wanted just to take a moment to acknowledge Mary and her team for the ongoing support and guidance that she's provided as we continue to work through the plan. So regarding the current status, which is the focus of our presentation today, 11 of the plan's actions were completed between April and June of this year. The work broadly falls into 3 categories related to revisions and updates to the Sandag bylaws, as well as board policies. We also, several of the actions related to work preparing and communicating salaries and benefits information as we put together the FY22 program budget for your consideration. And finally, there was market salary range study that was conducted in the early part of this year. Management provided Mary with information demonstrating completion of all of these items at the end of June. And I believe the presentation that Mary will give this morning will describe the testing and verification work that her office has done. At this point, I'd like to invite John, General Counsel, to share highlights of the work that he and his team completed in this time period.
Thank you, Melissa. Good morning. 4 actions related to your bylaws and board policies were taken and completed in response to recommendations that were made in the audit action plan. The revisions address the allocation of responsibilities, it's Board Policy 1, and the delegation of authority in Board Policy 17 to the Executive Director, and similar direction in the SANDAG bylaws. The actions were approved by you as the Board of Directors at your June 11, 2021 meeting. And these respond specifically to recommendations 1.1, 1.2, 2.2, and 3.3. Revisions to the SANDAG bylaws were made in Article 5, and their amendment was made to Section 4D, clarifying the Executive Director's responsibility for the employee handbook and the administrative policies that are used for the administration of SANDAG's personnel system. Also, Section 4E in the SANDAG bylaws was amended, providing direction to the Executive Director on fulfilling responsibilities of his office consistent with the requirements of the bylaws, board policies, employee handbook, and other administrative policies of SANDAG. You also approved revisions to 2 board policies. Section 3.1.15 of Board Policy 1, Allocation of Responsibilities, was amended to clarify the process for board leadership to take action on time-sensitive actions that would otherwise be delegated to the Executive Committee. This allowance was conditioned on the inability to timely convene a quorum of the Executive Committee per your direction. Finally, Board Policy 17, Delegation of Authority to the Executive Director, was also amended at Sections 5 and 7, both to clarify the Executive Director's responsibility for administering SANDAG's personnel system consistent with the employee handbook, which was before you at that June meeting. I'll also note that you also approved amendments to Board Policy 11, and while those were not specifically the subject of the audit action plan, these were updated based on collaboration between management and our auditor, Mary Kay, on suggested best practices for SANDAG to adopt. I'll now turn things back over to Melissa to cover the balance of her report.
Great. Thank you, John. Appreciate the updates there. So the second group of activities, there were 6 in total that we've completed under the plan. All were done in conjunction with preparing the FY22 program budget that this board approved in May at your meeting on May 14th. The broad intention behind these actions was to prepare and document information pertaining to proposed personnel costs, that is staffing, compensation, and benefits costs, in a more robust manner, and also to ensure that this information was fully and transparently communicated to you, the board, during consideration of both the draft budget in March as well as the final budget in May. The work can be summarized perhaps into 3 themes. One was related to enhancing communication. Relative to prior years, a greater level of detail regarding staffing and compensation was incorporated into the written staff reports that described changes as well as recommendations, and in the staff's presentations to you regarding the FY22 program budget. With respect to improved documentation, again, during development of the budget this year, staff prepared additional supporting information to document how various personnel-related expenses were developed and estimated and ultimately flowed through into the budget document that you reviewed and approved. Attachments 2 and 3 to the staff report on this item are examples of the work that was completed here. And finally, new policies and procedures were developed both to use internally for staff as well as for board approval. Again, as part of strengthening processes and practices, staff implemented a policy that describes the responsibilities for maintaining, approving, and communicating the agency's classification salary range table, as well as the special compensation table. This work, as I noted, included development of a special compensation table or policy. This was new for Sandag. Staff consulted with CalPERS to ensure that the legal requirements with respect to the salary range table and special compensation tables were all met. And as I've noted in other items here, approval of both the salary range table and special compensation table were brought forward to the board for your consideration in conjunction with the FY22 program budget, which you adopted at your meeting on May 14th. And the final item that I wanted to mention in terms of accomplishments with respect to the action plan is the market salary range study that staff conducted or completed earlier this year. Historically, studies like this are done every 2 to 3 years. So this was consistent with that timing. And also, as we've done in prior years, Sandag engaged the agency's compensation consultant, CPS HR Consulting, to perform this work for us. The study resulted in a set of recommendations that were recommended to the board, again, as part of your consideration of the final FY22 budget on May 14th. Primarily, these recommendations pertained to reallocating certain positions within the salary range table to ensure that they represented a market salary range. The other recommendation that staff brought forward was a request for an equity adjustment pool equivalent to approximately 1% of the proposed salary and benefits budget to be used specifically to provide pay increases for employees who were identified as having pay rates that were considered below market. For reference, the project report completed by the consultant has been included as attachment 6. So regarding next steps, as you review the progress report, attachment 1 to this item starting on page 14 of your agenda package, you may note that there were 2 items due for completion by the end of September. These items had to do with processes and practices for distribution of compensation adjustments to employees. Documentation of this work was transmitted to Mary Kay last week, and I believe she is commencing her review of that work now. Also, with respect to upcoming work, there are 11 items that are due for completion by the end of December. And again, as we noted in the progress at a glance summary, these are marked as being currently underway. They relate to financial policies and procedures, more work related to compensation program administration, as well as our recruitment practices. At this stage, all of those items are on track and expected to be completed by the due date. Staff management, in collaboration with Mary, we intend to present our next update on the action plan to the audit committee in November and to this board soon after that. And just to make a closing remark to say that staff has worked diligently in the past 9 months to complete the items noted in the comp audit action plan, not just to address the findings from last year's audit, but more importantly, to ensure the agency has strong and effective processes and practices in place. And this work reflects management's commitment to continuous improvement. So Chair Blakespear, thank you again for the opportunity to present the report. This concludes our portion of the presentation this morning.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We appreciate all the very hard work over a long time to approach this topic. So we're really grateful for the diligence there. We also have Mary Kay, who is our independent performance auditor, and she is going to report on 5B. So maybe we'll hear from her and then we'll take any public comments and then board comments.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. I'll be brief. I'll just kind of recap what we did from the audit perspective side. We were provided 11 items, 10 action items, and one that was actually another one that was performed earlier. Our review consisted of vouching the time commitment that was stated, testing the outcomes and outputs such as policies and procedures, any tracking sheets or system controls related to the matter, and then testing those items to determine if they are actually working. In this case, we reviewed mostly the changes around the 10 items were policy and procedure changes. So we reviewed the policies and procedures to determine if they were applicable and reasonable and relevant, that would address the actions needed to address the recommendations made. And in fact, they did. They were all very detailed. We worked back and forth with Melissa and John to get what needed to be done. The last part that still needs to be in review, everything checked out, everything was great. The time commitments were all met. We still are in the process of testing 2 areas. And that is the actual documentation that was provided to justify the fiscal year 21 raises and compensations provided. The policy was that there was a lack of documentation to support how individuals were provided raises and compensation and bonuses. And the work to be done was to ensure that there was enough or sufficient documentation. So that process, we are kind of bringing together fiscal year 21 and 22. Once those compensations are done, I'll look at the documentation around them, make recommendations, which then Melissa and the management can share with those responsible for performing performance reviews and ensure that those suggestions that I identified are incorporated into fiscal year 22's performance reviews. Once the fiscal year 22 performance adjustments have been provided, I will then go in and take another sample to ensure that what was provided as recommendations for the fiscal year 21 update on documentation was incorporated and actually was working. So once those 2 are tested, that will come to you in, as Melissa said, November or December, along with the other items that at that point will be due as well. The only recommendation or suggestion that I had after doing my review was around the appearance or the documentation provided to the board members in the budget. As you know, our budget is huge and the information provided to board members is atrocious. And there's a lot of information there. And so my only recommendation around that is to try to get away from not just the enormous amount of numbers that are being provided, but to maybe do a dashboard or a flow chart of some sort where the board has the ability to see from a visual perspective where the bodies lie in SANDAG and how the money is distributed amongst the departments or the units and then the positions within that. So it's almost like starting with a dashboard, a visual dashboard that the board members are able to click on and drill down. And then as they drill down, they can drill down to those large amount of numbers, but to have that visual first, which just is more user friendly for a budget with so much information in it. It would just be helpful. So that was my only recommendation. We are doing a new ERM system, so that might be a way to get that done and not be so much effort or work on everybody. But other than that, everything is working smoothly, looks great, and the action plans are being implemented very timely, and the work effort is truly there. It's very visible. So with that, that's my close. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Mary Kay. We appreciate your hard work and diligence and also making good recommendations like to be more user friendly with a visual dashboard. So thank you for suggesting that.
You're welcome.
And so do we have any public comments on this agenda item? This is information only, so there's no motion required.
No, Chair, I don't see any hands from the public.
Okay, Mayor Jones.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I really like Mary Kay's recommendation of the user-friendly dashboard. I think that would be extremely helpful for not only just the board members, but also the public in transparency. So I'd love to see staff work with Mary on that so that we could get that implemented. I think it would be a great improvement. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, thank you to everybody who worked hard on this item. We will move on to the next discussion item, which is the draft environmental impact report for the regional plan. So Keith Greer is going to take this item. And then I just want to remind everybody what was mentioned at the beginning, which is that the California Environmental Quality Act doesn't allow staff to answer questions from the public or board members about the contents of the EIR. So staff will respond in writing to all the comments, including verbal questions during the meeting as part of the final EIR. And if you want a more understanding about that, we can always ask our attorney, John, to speak up about the specifics of that if anybody wants that. But for now, let's go to Keith.
Good morning, Chairs Blake Spear and members of the board. Happy Friday. My name is Keith Greer. I'm the planning manager in charge of the preparation of the EIR for the 21 regional plan. Also virtually with us is Al Herson of the Sahagi Law Group, who is an outside CEQA legal counsel for the agency on this project. Al is also, in my opinion, one of the top CEQA lawyers in the nation, so we're really fortunate to have him. As the chair mentioned, this is an informational report on the status of the EIR for the 21 regional plan. The draft EIR has been completed and was sent out on August 27th for a 45-day public review. That public review ends this Monday, October 11th. Next slide, please. So the draft EIR and all 15 technical appendices can be found on the San Diego Forward website. You can read, download the entire document or individual sections that you may be interested in. The executive summary, both in English and Spanish, are provided, and this document is available in alternative formats by requesting San Diego ADA coordinator to have that done. Hard copies were also provided at the San Diego offices and Central Library. Next slide, please. So I think many of you are familiar with the purpose of the EIR, but it helps to kind of visually see this. The purpose of this EIR is to identify the physical impacts on the environment from the 21 regional plan, both the transportation network that's proposed and also the land uses in the sustainable community strategy. Also, the EIR identifies mitigation to help reduce those impacts. The EIR solicits public input through a public review of the draft document and responds in writing to all comments received as part of the EIR. That's where we are right now in the public review period. The final EIR was provided to the board for certification as part of their consideration for the adoption of the regional plan itself. The draft EIR is considered a program EIR under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, which is used to evaluate a plan or a program. The details on the magnitude of extent of many of the impacts are unknown at this time at the program level and require subsequent environmental review under CEQA. Also, San Diego does not have land use authority, so many of the mitigation measures identified would have to be done at the local level through land use planning or at the transportation agencies that are building projects such as Caltrans. Next slide. The draft EIR for the 21 regional plan covers 19 different resource areas, each with one or more criteria for determining whether something is a significant environmental impact or not, and all the mitigation for impacts are identified as significant. So CEQA practitioners are very fond of saying that the environmental document needs to tell a story. And sometimes that story gets lost in the thousands of pages of analysis that's required to make an EIR technically robust and legally defendable. So today I wanted to highlight 5 key takeaways related to vehicle miles traveled under the transportation analysis, greenhouse gas emissions, air quality, and the loss of native habitat and the conversion of agricultural lands. This is also attached in one of your report. And the idea here is to take the time to reflect on what the EIR is actually telling us in graphic format. Next slide, please. So I think many of you are aware that CEQA changed under Assembly Bill 743 to look at vehicle miles traveled as the new metric for evaluating transportation impacts under the California Environmental Quality Act. So the plan's total VMT, shown here in the purple line, rises a modest 6.6% over the plan's life through 2050. For comparison or to reflect upon that, the Southern California Association of Governments over the same time period has an 11% increase, and the Sacramento Council of Governments has a 16% increase over the same time period. So we're doing much better than other MPOs in the state. But the state uses a target that looks at reductions of VMT on a per capita basis. So if you see this green line here, the total plan VMT per capita actually falls 14.1% over the same time period, as shown by the green line. And that's really close to CARB's target, their 2050 goal, California Air Resources Board target of 14.3% reductions of total VMT per capita. So we're getting really close on the plan itself. Additionally, the plan has identified 2.2 additional percent reductions in VMT through the off-model transportation demand management strategies identified in the plan in Appendix S. So if those were implemented, we could actually exceed the CARB target and reduce our VMT to 16.3%. That's significant, and that's a really good goal of the plan. This reduction, however, requires that SANDAG work with local jurisdictions and private employers in partnership with SANDAG to make that mitigation come true. So the impact on the EIR will remain significant and unmitigated, but we have a good chance of working with local jurisdictions and private employers to make this happen and reduce VMT. Next slide. So let's turn over to greenhouse gas emissions, which is one of the primary goals of our plan to reduce GHG in the region. We have 5 different criteria to evaluate GHG impacts in the EIR. The first 4, SANDAG exceeds those goals identified in the threshold in the EIR. GHG emissions drop 28% in the plan. The plan exceeds the SB 375 reduction target for 2035. The plan also exceeds the board resolution target of 30% reductions for the entire on-road transportation sector. In addition, the plan is in alignment and actually supports local climate action plans. All that's really good news for future of GHG reductions. The last criteria is the plan's ability to achieve statewide reductions targets as identified in the State Assembly Bill 32 and executive orders. So if you recall, those are some very aggressive targets that the state has set: 40% reductions of 1990 levels by 2030, 80% reductions by 1990 levels by 2050, and carbon neutrality in 2024. So how does the plan do on this? Next slide. So as previously mentioned, GHG emissions dropped from 2016 to 2050 from 26 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent to 18 million metric tons by 2050. For context, the 2015 regional plan would have resulted in 26 million metric tons in 2050. The reference points for the state's goals here are shown in pink. The 21 regional plan alone does not meet the state's aggressive targets. The 21 regional plan recognizes that this is a big lift to reach these targets as proposed by the state, and has significant investments proposed as part of its supporting policies and programs that are identified in Appendix A and B to the plan. These will help reduce VMT and GHG throughout the region. The EIR carries forward $242 million of these investments as proposed mitigation for GHG in the EIR itself. Next slide. 4 mitigation conditions have been identified that will help facilitate climate action plans, provide new funding for zero emission vehicles, implement a nature-based climate carbon sequestration program, and advance smart cities and strategies to close the digital divide. All these will help, again, reduce GHG and VMT measures identified in the EIR. But the regional plan can only go so far. In the development of the EIR, SANDAG staff came to the same conclusion as the other big MPOs in California. And I'll read this statement that the EIR includes. To paraphrase, achieving the state's mid-century goals, those are the ones I identified before, will require major shifts in energy sector, decarbonization of existing and future construction buildings, electrification of the entire transportation network, sustainable solid waste and wastewater management practices, and direct carbon dioxide removal strategies from the atmosphere. This is well beyond the scope and jurisdiction of SANDAG alone. And so while they have a significant unmitigated impact, it still is a significant change from our last regional plan. Next slide. Overall, air quality improves throughout the region as the region moves towards cleaner, newer vehicles that emit less emissions per mile basis and an increase in transit uses. We see a reduction in the precursors of ozones, those are the reactive organic gases and nitrogen oxides. We see a reduction of carbon monoxide and fine inhalable particulate matters of 2.5 microns or less. That's the PM 2.5. So under the plan, all these get much better as we move from baseline conditions to 2050. So while particulate matters from auto emissions, those are the things that are coming out of tailpipe, get much better, the inhalable particulate matter that are above 10 microns, PM10, actually increase. And those are the things that you get from the brake and tire wear of your car, or dust from the roads and paved roads that get knocked up in the atmosphere. So the reason why is because we have a modest increase of VMT, that's 6.6% increase. Therefore, we're going to have more brake and tire wear and more dust in roads and the pavement compared to our current baseline conditions. In addition, we see an increase in sulfur oxides associated with expanded heavy rail trains as proposed in the plan. This, however, changes if with the mitigation conditions as identified in the EIR, where we propose to have operation of zero emission trains on all new train rail lines after 2035 as proposed. With that mitigation condition, the only remaining significant unavoidable effect is that PM10 for air quality emissions. And the reason why, again, is the brake and tire wear and the dust from paved roads. So good news overall for air quality. Next slide. Finally, to turn to the loss of habitat and the conversion of agricultural land. The land use patterns of the sustainable community strategy included in the plan results in a more compact development served by more efficient transportation network. So instead of growing out, we're growing in and up, and we're having that network served by more efficient transit. This results in a much less impact to native habitat and agricultural lands compared to the prior plan. The plan will result in about 7,600 acres of loss of native habitat and wetlands, and about 7,500 acres of agricultural conversion to non-agricultural lands. While this is significant, it represents a whopping 93,000 acre decrease compared to the 2015 plan, or if you take percentages, 86% decrease. So more conservation, and just for context, 93,000 acres is about 3 times the size of Chula Vista. So much less habitat and much less conversion of agricultural land under the 21 regional plan compared to 2015. Next slide. Finally, I'd like to turn to alternatives to the proposed plan. So SEQA requires that a reasonable range of alternatives to the project, in this case, the 21 regional plan, be evaluated that meets the minimum objectives of the project. So we looked at the alternatives and we looked at varying the land use patterns, the transportation networks, and the pricing and policies. And so those are, think of it as a dial, we turn up land use patterns, different transportation networks, different prices and policies, and see if we can reduce those impacts as identified in the plan. So with the alternatives, we have 3 alternatives identified in the EIR. Alternative 1 is the required no project, which is only projects included are those environmental clearance that have full funding and are under construction or otherwise reasonably foreseeable in the current plan. So this reflects the SANDAG would fall out of compliance with state and federal permit requirements by January 1st, 2022 for the state and October 25th, 2023 for the federal government, and no additional funding would be provided to SANDAG. The second alternative uses the transportation network in the 2015 plan itself and the adopted general plan land uses of the 18 jurisdictions in the county in that plan. It includes no mobility hubs, but increases new pricing and user fees trying to match the 21 regional plan. The idea here was, could you do an alternative that uses the existing network and existing land use patterns, but increase pricing and user fees to try to reduce BMT and GHG. Alternative 3 does the other direction. If the plan is good for reducing BMT and GHG, can you maximize that? So the plan limits this alternative limits future growth to mobility hubs and increases new pricing and user fees by doubling them compared to the regional plan itself. So it's a lot of information in the alternatives, but it's analyzed in chapter 6 of the EIR. Section 6.4 identifies the alternative 3 as the environmentally superior alternative. That's not surprising. A comparison of all the alternatives is summarized in chapter 6, and the data is actually in appendix O of the EIR itself. Lots of good information leading to the plan. Next slide. So wrapping this all up, the code review ends on October 11th at midnight. Staff will be working to respond to all comments in writing, and any comments we receive verbally today will also be responded to in writing as part of the final EIR. That final EIR is provided to the SANDAG Board for certification prior to any action on the 21 regional plan. And that concludes staff's report. I'd be happy to address any questions of the process or to find an item in the EIR. We will take any technical questions on the content of the EIR down, and we will answer them in the final EIR itself. Also, any legal questions, we have our attorney, John Kirk, here at SANDAG, and outside counsel, Al Herson, to help address those. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Keith. I don't think this is a technical question, but tell me if you think it is and you can't answer it. In the slide that you just went by where you had the alternatives, 3 alternatives, I was wondering if that alternative 2 did it meet the state law requirements around GHG reduction and VMT reduction? Because that land use is consistent with 2019 regional plan. I was wondering, did it get there with higher fees, but without changing land use?
So the land use component of the regional plan is such a huge factor in terms of reducing impacts. To answer your question directly, no, it's not a technical question. We can answer that. The alternative 2 does not meet the state goals of GHG reductions. All that's outlined in Chapter 6, and a comparison of all 3 of them are provided.
Okay, so alternative 1 and 2 don't meet the goals, and alternative 3 over meets the goals.
That's correct. I wouldn't over, but it exceeds the goals.
Exceeds the goals. Okay. 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 Great. Thank you. Are there other board questions? And also, let's ask if there are questions from the public. So let me just ask before I call on you, Councilmember Shu, if there are there public members who would like to speak to this?
I don't see any hands at the moment.
Okay. If you are a member of the public who wants to, please put your hand up, and I will call on Councilmember Shu.
Thank you for the presentation, Keith. I've been asking a question with regards to health effects for over 10 years of RTPs, so I'm prompted to ask again. And I understand this may not be part of the EIR, so this, Keith, this may give you a chance to answer the question more directly. I know the EIR does have some data with regards to air quality, but the part that I'm often drawn to ask is, what are the health effects in terms that we could understand, as in numbers of asthma cases, for example, or cancer. And we know our transportation system causes that kind of health impact. So, and now that we have a very strong equity statement for Sandag, is there some way that we're going to find out how these transportation systems that we are planning are going to affect our communities, particularly in terms of these health effects and health impacts, and through an equity lens as well? We're going to find that out anytime soon.
So the answer, Councilmember Shu, is yes. The EIR does not address social equity matters. CEQA does not have that as part of its requirement. It's solely focused on the physical effect on the environment. So Chapter 4.3 of the EIR talks about air quality. It does address air quality perspective from a cancer and non-cancer, for example, acute and chronic conditions, but it looks at it as a regional level, and that is also followed through in the technical appendix D of the EIR. What the board had asked in the previous resolution is that Sandag look at the health outcomes of the plan and look at that as it relates to especially the socially disadvantaged communities out there. So staff is working on that, and that report is pending. We will have something available in mid-November for the board to consider on that aspect. But the EIR does cover air quality. It does have cancer-related risks. It does have other non-cancer-related risks identified already in it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Hall.
Yes, thank you. And I'll try and keep my comments today on a broad level, and I'll save the technical ones for later. But Mr. Guerrero, if at the end of this, and once this is adopted, if our general plans and our growth forecasts are different than what you forecasted and you've based your models on, what do we have as cities to look forward to? Are we going to be penalized, or when when those numbers aren't aligned, what happens?
So the EIR only reflects the proposed project. That's the transportation network and the land uses as proposed in the Sustainable Community Strategy. What I think you're asking for is, what if a project comes in the future? And again, Sandag doesn't have land use authority. It's only the jurisdictions that have land use authority. What if it's in conflict or different than the proposed Sustainable Community Strategy in the regional plan itself? And that's a fair question. That's outside the EIR process. Remember, all future projects still have to go through environmental review. And I think what you're talking about more is a conflict between the land uses potentially in the general plan of a city and the proposed land uses in the Sustainable Community Strategy of the plan. Sandag does have an intergovernmental review process, and we work all jurisdictions to try to bring those two in alignment. So there's no easy answer right now because the conflicts, if any, may be radically different from a case-by-case basis. I hope that satisfies your questions, and we can follow up with you on that.
Yes, and you stated it a lot clearer than what I did. And what concerns us, from our city is there were many assumptions made that didn't align themselves with our assumptions. And so just, you know, and I know every city is unique unto itself. And we were just wondering if there were, I guess the projects then would be the ones that are penalized for the difference in greenhouse gases, the vehicles miles traveled, or however that may work out. Is that correct? Am I close there?
Yeah, I would think of different than penalizing. You know, the regional plan sets forth a vision of reducing VMT and GHG. Projects that are not part of that vision and still have increases in GHG and VMT, those would still have to be analyzed under their own specific EIRs, own specific environmental, as they would have to anyways. So penalize is a too strong of a word, I would say.
Okay, so I mean, part of this is to make assumptions about our future growth and the vehicles miles traveled and how that gets to greenhouse gases. And, you know, if there are conflicts in the future, then obviously there got to be consequences, you know, and I'm just wondering how those would be addressed. So the other conversation, I mean, you've done tremendous outreach. But how much outreach have you actually done city by city where you sat down and actually talked to our planning staffs and really dove into what our future is? I mean, we have spent many, many years creating our future. And so, you know, for many different aspects, and I won't go into all those, but how much time have you spent with the cities and making sure that these documents are pretty well aligned?
So again, the EIR has a certain fixed public review period, and that's what we're in now. I think the larger context is the public outreach, the tremendous public outreach that came as part of the regional plan itself. And for that, you know, I'll ask Colleen Clemenson if she'd like to weigh in on the significant amount that has occurred in the past.
Yes, if I may, Chair. We've done tremendous amount of outreach with the working groups, which include our planning directors, public works directors. We've had numerous one-on-one meetings with cities to make sure that we're working hard to sort of align things. Also with the climate action plans, it's not just the general plans, it's how this regional plan sets up each of the 19 local jurisdictions to have a successful climate action plan. So I think, I mean, we have a whole section in the appendices about the outreach that we've conducted and the workshops that have been held with local jurisdictions and stakeholder groups throughout the process. So we can definitely point you to that.
And my only comment is, you know, is if that was enough. I mean, in your assumptions of the city of Carlsbad, you missed it by 3,000 units. So somehow it seems like we missed the detail in the conversation. So maybe that's on us. I don't know, but that's a pretty big number just for our city.
Maybe this is a place I could clarify something.
Sure.
So there's two places where we really look at land use. One of them is that we do a regional growth forecast. And the regional growth forecast forecasts growth based on what we believe is likely to happen based on current local general plans. So we did a regional growth forecast, and that is all documented in Appendix F of the regional plan. And we've done forecasts, as you know, Mayor Hall, you know, that's kind of one of the things Sandag does on a regular basis. What's different with this regional plan, in the past, we always used that regional growth forecast as our land use assumption for the plan. This time we took the forecast, the overall number. So how much are we going to grow by? We kept that same number, but looked at a different land use pattern that focuses growth and development in our urbanized areas of the region. And irrespective of what's in a general plan, that this would be a vision for a land use pattern that maximizes all the transportation investments that are included in the plan, that maximizes the opportunity to reduce vehicle miles traveled, and maximizes the opportunity to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So when you're talking about something being different than your general plan, this is guidance going forward for what local jurisdictions should consider as you update your plans, so that you can meet your climate action goals, and we as a region collectively can maximize our opportunities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that's the difference. I think you're very familiar with that regional growth forecast. And what we've got in the plan, we take the numbers from that regional growth forecast, but put that into what we call a sustainable community strategy land use pattern. So that's the visionary land use pattern that best matches up with this transportation system that's included in the plan.
So I really appreciate that, you know, and in a former slide, we talked about open space and enhancing open space. So is it your understanding that you want to preserve open space in let's say in the backcountry and use open space along the coast for future growth?
No, I mean, definitely preserve open space in the backcountry, but we absolutely need urban open space. So that's really important, especially as we continue to urbanize. We need open spaces for people to be able to walk and, you know, just cleaner air. The open space helps to keep our air cleaner as well.
And just as one observation, I mean, when I talked about those 3,000 units, many of those were in dedicated open space, was what you forecasted.
So that's something that we can talk about more. I think, again, the way our model works, it sort of generalizes where, you know, puts units, say, in a mobility hub area. It's not meant to be specific parcel by parcel, but we recognize that, you know, we have to put these units somewhere. So those are things that obviously we'd have to work through in a more detailed planning process, like we were discussing earlier with Mayor Huebner. That's why we want to make planning grants available so that we can work together with you all on that.
And that gets me back to where I started. You know, if there had been some detailed conversation, I think, as you've stated, between the cities and Sandag, some of these areas I don't think would have happened. And that's my concern, because I understand, you know, we each have our land, you know, our own general plans and what we're working towards. And we'd like to think that our climate action plan is above and beyond. And we want to be certain that the others are equal. And that, you know, that the assumptions here are as correct as they can be. And without a clear dialogue, I think, and an in-depth dialogue with each city, it creates concern with me. And I'll make one more comment and then I'll let others speak. But going back to what Mr. Rodriguez said, or Councilmember Rodriguez said in Oceanside, and one of the concerns we have, and this is based on 20 years of study and implementation, is I-5 and 78. And so, you know, the dedication of 12 lanes, 2 HOV lanes on north and south and I-5, in a dedicated HOV lane, in addition to what is there today. I mean, that's what our general plans have been based on for years and years and years. And so in the city of Carlsbad, we have 3 north-south parallel highways, major arterials parallel I-5. We also have 4 east-west major arterials going through our city. So when the freeways don't work, that congestion starts to go out into our communities, and that causes us great concern. So to make major changes after we've been building cities for 20 years and all these pieces trying to come together, when we make major changes and you talk about greenhouse gases, well, you might move them from one area, but you're sure as heck going to put them into another area, because that load isn't going to go away, not under this plan or any future plan.
I don't know, Madam Chair, if you want me to respond to any of that, or we can hold that until the meeting on the 29th.
Well, if you had anything you wanted to say, go ahead.
Well, what I would love to share is that, first of all, on the 78 corridor, if you look at Appendix A, we're talking about 2 managed lanes in each direction, and the connectors, both the connectors that everyone is so interested in, connecting to Interstate 15 and connecting to Interstate 5. That's a critical link. And really making all of this work includes the use of flexible fleets, really promoting carpooling, using that, just like what we see on Interstate 15 that's so successful, the 2 lanes, That's what we're talking about on the 78. So 2 managed lanes in each direction on State Route 78. So that gets to the challenge that you all are facing, especially when we're talking about that connection, when you're coming off Interstate 15 and there's a big, backup just getting on to the 78. So that connector fix on both ends, as well as the managed lane. So as Hassan said in his opening remarks, we think what we're proposing here is better than what has been in the plans before, and really takes into consideration exactly what you're saying, what happens on the parallel local streets and roads.
Okay, thank you. And before I call on you, Mayor Jones, I just wanted to ask one follow-up question related to Mayor Hall's comments. So I appreciated what you were sharing earlier about how the modeling doesn't put population in certain parcels, like open space parcels or that, but it in general puts it around mobility hubs. And I'm just curious about the modeling's relationship with RENA. So each city has a number, and then that goes forward for an 8-year cycle. So is there any relationship between the RENA allocation and the modeling?
There is. So a couple of things I want to clarify. We use these generalized geographies and just say within this generalized geography, populate this with X amount of housing units. In some cases, with the way our model works, it might put that in an open space area. And so what maybe I didn't explain that well was that we're not assuming that something's going to happen in that open space area. That's where we rely on the local jurisdictions to look at the detail about how that housing could be accommodated within this general area. When it comes to the RENA, one of the things we did as we looked at that SCS land use pattern, so not just the forecast, but as we looked at that land use pattern, we made assumptions that each of the jurisdictions would meet their regional housing needs assessment. And so that was an underlying assumption. And so we made sure then, because we have to, by law, show that the land use pattern can accommodate the regional housing needs assessment. So part of our exercise in creating that land use pattern was to make sure that every number that every region, every city and county was given, that we put that within generally those mobility hub areas.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Mayor?
Yeah, I think so,
okay.
Actually. Thank you. Mayor Jones.
Thank you. Okay, well, now I've been making lots of notes as staff was talking about things. So let me just try to ask a few questions, and then I have a few comments based on my planning staff's delving into the regional plan as far as it pertains to our city. And so one quick question that just occurred to me, if we're modeling in general areas that open space is located, I'm not sure how we can't be saying that that space is not going to be used if that's the only area within the actual modeling areas that we're talking about. And then, so you can get back to that, but one of the things that you had said, Colleen, that really I wanted to make crystal clear is you're just talking about the 78 connectors being completed and then having 2 managed lanes on the 78. So where are those managed lanes going to be located?
So right now, again, this is at the 50,000 foot level. What we envision is using the shoulders for one of the managed lanes and then repurposing one of the general purpose lanes to be a managed lane. So it'd be 2 managed lanes in each direction and 2 general purpose lanes in each direction. So
does Caltrans currently allow the shoulders to be used? Because I thought we had talked about that many years ago. If we have stranded cars that have broken down or situations like that, where would those go? How would that be safe? Because we're already concerned now with people using the emergency lane in the median and then also the shoulders if they break down. How would we be able to accommodate their safety, their full safety?
Ms. Jones, I just want to we did have discussion with the director of Caltrans on Michigan last week, actually. Caltrans, we're working with Caltrans District 11 and the headquarters about using the shoulders, but also taking an existing general purpose lane and converting it would require a state legislation and would require actually a federal legislation that the director of Caltrans is aware of and facing in other regions. So yes, they will allow us in certain cases to use the shoulders, but we'll still need a state legislation to be able to take an existing general purpose lane to make it.
Well, one of the most dangerous things is when your car breaks down and you're in the shoulder now. That's where most people are actually killed. It's very unsafe. Okay, just want to bring that up. And then, so when we're talking about a vision and a guidance of new growth being limited to only mobility hubs, which in some cases is the unbuildable property, I just want to make note that I am very concerned about that. We value our open space here in San Marcos, and we are absolutely, I would not be supportive of any plan countywide, to be honest, that would infringe on any open space or park area or anything like that. So I think we really need to be very careful when we're talking about these general areas that oftentimes are incorporating that open space area. So I just want to make mention of that.
I think it's very important, if I may, just Mayor Jones, just to make sure we're very clear. When we did the allocation of housing in these general areas, anything that was identified as, you know, had a land use code on it that we know from your local jurisdiction that said open space, that was not an area that received units. That was not considered sort of a receiver site. So I want to make that really clear. Open space is important, whether it's backcountry open space or urban open space.
Okay, so my city staff is actually, my planning staff is working on preparing our comments. We're sending the letter over sometime today, but I just wanted to make mention of a couple of our different items that we're really focusing on, and that is that the VMT accomplishes state goals, but it also requires local jurisdictions to actively engage in TDM program implementation. And then also note that the GHG regional plans does not achieve the state's reductions, which you already had mentioned earlier. But one of the most important things is they're preparing the comments, but the key concerns that we have right now are related to the land use model assumptions and the assurance that the funding will materialize and be prioritized for North County projects. And that would include examples like the 78, which was promised to the voters of all of San Diego County in Transnet. And so when we're talking about, you know, which we just talked about a moment ago, the 78 and repurposing a lane that already was not talked about as being a managed lane, and people paying to actually drive in that lane. So that's essentially eliminating a lane for all of North County to use. And, you know, here in San Marcos specifically, we have a lot of challenges with traffic in itself. And when you're pushing people off of the 78, as Mayor Matt Hall had specified a little bit earlier, you know, you're really going to hurt my city, because we have already about 40,000 students that come into San Marcos on a daily basis with CSU San Marcos, and then also Palomar College. And then we also have St. Augustine and some other smaller colleges. So we've got a lot of people moving through our city. And when you're talking about moving them from the 78 onto the local roads, that's what happens when you start charging people to drive on a road that they can't afford to drive on. You're forcing them onto local roads. So I want to make sure that we do pay very close attention to this and how this plan will affect our communities, and how much it will you know, cost and you know, take away our quality of life, because that's going to be a consideration that we certainly need to keep in mind. And that's really all I have to say today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Hsu.
Well, I'd like to first start out by saying how much I appreciate Mayor Jones's comments about safety and campaign promises that were made from previous transit measures. They were essentially campaign type of promises that I think if we were to fulfill them, it will hurt us more. But safety, I think, is an issue. And I just wanted to remind people that driving cars is the most dangerous way to travel per mile. In fact, 17 times more dangerous than traveling by rail. And of course, much more dangerous than traveling if you're in a bus or some other form of public transit. So I think that we should keep that in mind, that vehicle travel is the most dangerous form of transportation. I have some really planning type or transportation and questions for Colleen or Keith. And if you could keep your answers fairly quick, I think you can ask them pretty quick. One of them is, compared to 20, 30 years ago, is our region and our cities more densely populated than it was before?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. And I think that's because our general plans had to change to accommodate a denser population. And I think probably all of our cities, it certainly is in here in La Mesa.
Your open space plans throughout the region have actually decreased the density in the backcountry and put no more in cities, which is exactly what we're supposed to do.
Correct. And have we made, this is another yes or no type of question, have we made general plan amendments early in the county general plan amendments that actually increase density as well, more than what they had planned, actually reducing our open space?
No.
Well, general plan amendments, I'm thinking in the last 10, 15 years that the county did, allowing for additional developments. I'm thinking of
we could write a thesis on that, Councilmember Shu. So I understand. A yes or no.
Let me just quickly say that I think we've made accommodations within our general plans, whether at the county level or at the city level, to accommodate populations and development, which I think we're going to continue to do so. And lastly, my last question is, there's this issue of induced demand, and my environmental friends remind me that when you increase travel lanes, whether they be HOV lanes or any kind of lanes, expand, does that really work? Has it really worked in terms of reducing congestion when we expand roadways in big storm? I mean, I've heard of figures like in 2 to 4 years, you're back to where you were before. How does that, where does that concept come from? Is it true? Has it worked here in San Diego, expanding our roadways?
So Councilmember Chu, I can address that. So induced demand is a real thing. There are PhD dissertations on this issue. The Office of Planning and Research has done significant research, and that's part of the whole concept of moving towards a VMT as the metric, as opposed to level of service, which can create induced demand.
Thank you very much, because I think that theory has been out since the 1990s. However, our general plans and some of our planning systems have not taken those studies into account when we do our transportation planning and our general plans in our cities. That's all my quick questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Shu. Vice Chair Gloria.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment very quickly. The City of San Diego will be formally submitting our comments on this plan soon. And I just wanted to express my appreciation to staff today. You know, many of us were present for the previous RTP. As Keith's slides show, there's a lot of efforts been put in listening to the feedback we got from that cycle to really improve upon the plan. You saw that in the different alternatives being considered. I very much appreciate this proposed plans, major step toward reducing vehicle miles traveled. by single occupancy vehicles, as well as lowering GHG emissions in our region. I think that this plan is going to be critical to the city of San Diego reaching its climate action plan goal. As Keith, I think, mentioned in his comments, these are complementary efforts. What SANDAG does alongside local cities will help us meet our obligations under state law. And so, again, I appreciate having a partner in SANDAG advancing a plan that will allow my city to be successful. And I suspect that that's true for many of my colleagues here in their respective jurisdictions. There's a lot of bold, innovative ideas in this, again, not necessarily represented in the previous transportation plan. And I think a reflection of the fact that we're listening to community members and trying to include their feedback in this particular proposal. And that's, again, trying to assist the development of housing that actual real people can afford, giving them the infrastructure to support that while maintaining their quality of life, and by providing more high frequency transit, preserving our open space, and assisting with sustainable development. Mr. Hsu, Councilmember Hsu got to this a moment ago. We talk a lot about environmental impact. Recent events really do require all of us to call out the fact that this plan undeniably will make our community safer. And I appreciate the focus on helping us to meet our Vision Zero goals. I recognize we're not adopting the plan today, but Keith, hats off to you. I've sat in many land use hearings for a long time. Your explanation of how CEQA and EIRs work, I think, are helpful. It can often feel overwhelming, but I think you explained very clearly the metrics that we have to consider in a way that not only board members, but the public can absorb and react to. Again, we look forward to submitting our comments, but I wanted to just recognize and honor the effort that staff has made to create a plan that I think better prepares us for the future. And again, look forward to working collaboratively to improve upon this plan before its adoption before the end of this year. Again, Chair, thanks for allowing me to make those comments. And again, thank you, staff, for the yeoman's effort in getting us to this point, recognizing there's still a lot of work to be done before we get to the finish line.
Well, thank you, Vice Chair. That was nicely summarized. So with that, we are really grateful for the comments from board members and staff. I don't think we've had any public comments raise their hand, right, Francesca? Is that true?
No, Chair, no public comments.
Okay, great. So that is our last item, and it's informational only. So thank you very much for being here today. Our next Board of Directors meeting is October 22nd at 9 a.m. This meeting is officially adjourned.